I'm checking the tube.
Looks like it should be.
It didn't pop up yet. And I got it.
It's there. All righty. Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of the Bat Flip Podcast. Got Damian, Matt, and David here. Today, we are going to talk about the offseason has already started. We hinted last week or on our World Series wrap-up show that we had a move to talk about, so we'll get to that. We'll talk about some interesting option decisions that have had happen over the past couple days. And then we'll bring you our free agents predictions for the top, I think, 15-ish guys is what we have, something around there.
Something like that.
And then we'll talk about at the very end some other guys that got the qualifying offer that maybe should or shouldn't accept it at that point. But before we get into all that, David, we didn't have you on for the World Series episode. So how are you doing? And what was your thoughts on the outcome of the World Series?
Had a crummy weekend, crummy Monday, but we're all good. I'll skip over the college football portion of the Bat Flip podcast this week.
Too.
Yeah,
so Matt will too, right? So, it just bit of a disaster of a weekend, and ultimately glad for free agency. His first World Series, man, Freddie Freeman, right? A lot of the stuff we talked about during Matt and I's show last Monday when Damian was watching the World Series, and then before that when it comes to the predictions and stuff, like it came down to the stars. Freddie Freeman was the star that got it done for the Dodgers, and the Yankees weren't able to come back, and it felt like a pretty competitive World Series, but it was one that was just it felt over after that game one. Like whoever won that game one was gonna probably go on and get some momentum and kind of roll, and because it was the Dodgers, the moment was so big there, it feels like that was kind of how it boiled down. So I think Dodgers were the best team this year. It works nicely. Good World Series for MLB, a lot of highlights. It's good that off season's here, and I'm excited. I think there's a lot of open and potential for teams to make some moves, and I think there's some money to be spent. So I'm excited for free agency. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I've had a pretty good weekend. Obviously my football team was a disappointment, but everything else has been fun. So I did go down to the game on Saturday, so it was good to be outdoors. The weather was good, and it's always fun to go down there, even if they don't play well. But yeah, my fantasy football team won yesterday, so that was nice. I finally won something in one of my sports. So yeah, it's been a good weekend, and I'm with you, David. I'm excited to talk about some free agency. We got a few moves already happening and some interesting option decisions and stuff that have happened, and I think it's going to be a really interesting free agency because it seems like there's a lot of depth this year. We have one top guy and then some pretty good ones other than him, but we don't have like that year where we had like 6 shortstops that were all going to get $200 million deals. We don't have a top end like that, but we've got like a top guy, and then we've got a lot of depth this year, it feels like. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. Lots of money will be spent, and there's it's going to be interesting to see trade candidates out there too. So I'm ready to get into it, but Damian, I guess we talked on Friday. Have you had a good weekend? Are you still buzzing after the Dodgers win, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think I had much happen this past week to really celebrate or anything, but no, yeah, it was really fun this weekend, especially on Friday, getting to watch Los Angeles celebrate the parade, and just seeing all the players and like watching Kershaw be able to celebrate a World Series championship, right? Like he wasn't able to do it the first time. So watching that emotional moment there, and Walker Buehler after all his stuff and what he did there, like see him, like it was just so cool for all of that. So that really just tied a bow on the whole thing for me. And then my college football team did win this weekend. So, and we're number 1 overall. So I guess there's nothing. I know, sick brag, right? But hey, it's not all good. Okay, my other football team decided they wanted to think Joe Flacco was going to be the good quarterback to lead them winning towards the playoffs this year, and then they came out and threw up 227 total yards on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah,
at least I have.
Not what you want.
At least I have the Dodgers.
You got the Dodgers.
At least I got the Dodgers.
Oh man.
But Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this, Matt. I think you made some good points there about what the offseason is going to look like. This is my favorite time of the year. Always talking about these moves, the trades, the signings. What are people going to get? Like this episode right here might be my favorite episode of the year because we look like complete idiots and imbeciles at the end of the day. But like it's totally worth it because this is such fun conversation.
Yep.
So I can't wait.
Yeah, well, it's better than the Damien part of the predictions episode in the spring. So
Yep.
Yeah, those are. I always make myself look like a fool. Okay, but I do it for the people's entertainment.
Right.
It's always a couple years. You're just a couple years off. I mean, Lindor when he had his worst career season, and then Snell who had like a 6 ERA in the year you picked him.
Yeah,
like,
and then like 2 years later,
then they end up doing that. Well,
so they can think they could
Lindor
make me. Well, he got close.
He got close.
But,
close enough.
They could thank me for all that. Okay.
Like Matt Chapman could thank us, right?
Exactly. Like we are just helping the players out here. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're doing bad and you want to do good, just tell us to shit on you. Like that's the way to go.
Perfect.
But let's start with the move that we hinted at on the last episode, which was the Jorge Soler move from the Braves. He got traded from the Braves to the Angels for right-handed pitcher Griffin Canning. I believe that was straight up, right, Matt?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's 1-for-1.
Yeah, so we kind of hinted at it when Soler was traded from the Giants to the Braves. Like, hey, Braves are going to have some interesting decisions with Ozuna being a DH. Soler should be a DH, and that. But they just needed somebody at the time. Well, we've already got our answer. Soler got traded to the Angels. So, Matt, you're a resident Braves fan here, so why don't you go ahead and break this one down for us?
Yeah, so this was all about money for the Braves. I mean, Soler is still a pretty good player, but he didn't fit. There was a 0 chance the Braves were not bringing back Ozuna this year because, I mean, he was one of the best hitters in baseball last year, and if it wasn't for Ohtani, he would have been the best DH in the National League. He had like a 160 WRC plus on the season, so you weren't going to decline that option for $15 million. So you had Soler, and the Braves were playing him in the outfield during the season, but that was kind of a desperation move. They didn't really have many options to trade for, and they really needed somebody. So, that was the guy they ended up being able to get for without having to give up a ton of prospects. So I kind of hated that trade at the deadline, thinking all they're doing is not really helping the team that much, and getting and taking on money. But in this trade here, they gave all that money. They got rid of all that money. So it ended up being a good deal for the Braves. And he did pretty well for the Braves at the plate, but he was the worst defensive player I've ever seen when he was with the Braves. He's never been good, but he was, I've never seen, he was like, he might have been. It was miserable. Like he made a mistake in the outfield every single night, and a lot of times it was more than one. I mean, it's crazy because you think of him, he's not the slowest, most unathletic guy. It's just shocking to see how bad he is in the outfield. So that was unfortunate, but yeah, and then he got moved over to the Angels, which to me just makes 0 sense for the Angels. Why you would do that? I mean, you just took on a bunch of money, and Soler's a pretty good bat, but it's not like he's a replacement. He's a barely above replacement level player. I mean, as a DH, you got to be an elite hitter to be a really good DH for that money, and you can probably find a DH that can put up a 119 WRC plus. He's basically puts up a 119 to 120 WRC plus most years, and you can basically find a DH that does that anywhere. So, I mean, not to mention the fact that you can't play him in the outfield, and you're probably going to want to DH Trout some, right? Like, I mean, he's been injured so much. I know Trout's got a lot of defensive value still when he's healthy, but you want to keep him fresh. You want to keep him rested. You want to keep him not injured. So why would you bring in somebody who just eliminates that possibility? Unless I guess you could just throw him on the bench, but then you're just wasting $12 million or $13 million, whatever it is. And there's 2 years left on the deal too. So it just doesn't make any sense for them. But the return was Griffin Canning, who is a non-tender candidate. The projections have him at like maybe $4 million in ARB. So I don't know if the Braves are going to tender him a deal, but ate some innings for the Angels last year. His stuff is not great. He has a pretty good slider, but that's about it. And I mean, the Braves might feel like they can fix him, but I wouldn't be surprised if they non-tendered him too and just saved that money. They've made some money-saving moves so far, to prepare for free agency or maybe taking on salary in a trade or something. So they definitely that'll be a question mark, but it's better than getting nothing. I mean, you just get an option on a guy that you don't have to tender him a deal for a little while. So it's better than just like trading him for nothing. I don't know why the Angels threw him in there. I mean, the Angels could have just non-tendered him, and the Braves probably would have been happy to just give up the Soler deal without taking anybody back. But
It's
yeah,
a very Angels move.
it really is. I mean, I don't understand it at all from the Angels. I mean, theoretically, it makes their offense a tiny bit better, but I mean, what's the point? Like, you're gonna have to make unless you're gonna sign like 5 free agents to big contracts, they're not gonna be anywhere close to competitive this year.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point of signing a Jorge Soler? Yeah, I mean, you got to get starting pitchers. You got to get some. You got to get a couple of infielders probably, right? I mean, it's just probably another outfielder. Like I know you got a couple of young guys that you like, and Neto and Ohapi and maybe Shanuel, and then you still got Trout. But like other than that, I mean,
different Rengifo, who's solid.
Rengifo's okay, but I mean, like you just
I don't think the offense is so far away, but like I don't think it can consistently win when the pitching's that bad.
Well, I mean the pitching's the real issue for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean I'm with you. It's tough to
Plus they'll have Christian Moore up on opening day anyways.
Yeah. Probably.
I'll have the small interjection I have on this is that Griffin Canning was one of the guys last offseason that a bunch of my Cubs folks were identifying as a good option to go and try and fix.
Yeah.
And I don't think this season changed anything, right? That guy was he's stuck on the Angels. I think this is a great move for the Braves. It's whatever for the Angels, and it's another great Braves trade. Like I feel like Griffin Canning's going to be good.
You might be right, but in 2023 he was pretty good. He pitched 127 innings. He had almost 10 strikeouts per 9. His numbers on the strikeout to walk ratio were awesome, and he had a 382 xFIP in 127 innings. That's pretty good. A 4.32 ERA, but this year was way worse, and the StatCast numbers were really bad on him this year. So I don't know if it's something that is fixable or not, but definitely it's definitely worthy of picking him up just to give you that option to. I mean, it's like having a $4 million option on a 5-starter. I mean,
that's literally what I was going to say. It's well below market value for a 5-starter.
I mean,
like
if you get a couple weeks in here and you haven't really made any progress in the free agent market before the non-tender deadline, then you could just give him the $5 million. And if you are able to find a couple starters to sign, you can non-tender him. I mean,
I think you just pick it up anyways, because at the end of the day, I mean, there would be someone who wants to probably trade for a 5-starter that has $5 million or whatever.
Yeah, he's got some value.
Yeah.
And at the worst case, if even if it doesn't start, he starts the season as a 5-man, he could also become a swing man at that. Not terrible. So. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about a couple of the option decisions that we had happen, and then we can jump into the free agency predictions because those are going to take a while for us. But let's go through. Let's just mention the two that were probably expected all along, which was Blake Snell opting out of his deal to become a free agent, and Sean Manaea also opting out of his deal with the Mets to become a free agent. Both of those guys got the qualifying offer, I believe, right? Or
Snell did not.
Snell did not.
He got one last year.
Yeah. So Manaea did get the qualifying offer. Snell did not. So we'll talk more about Snell when we get to his free agency side. We'll talk about more Manaea on the back end when we talk about the qualifying offer decisions at that point. But the two kind of weird ones that we had happen is Cody Bellinger opted in to his deal. There was a lot of speculation that he was going to opt out of that deal that had 2 years remaining with the opt-out again. From the Cubs, but he ended up opting into it. And then the weird situation we had happened was with Gerrit Cole and the Yankees, where he opted out. There was another option in there for the Yankees to add an additional year at $36 million. They basically told Cole, like, hey, we'll talk an extension, but we're not giving you the extra year at $36 million at age 38. So then Cole was like, okay, well then I just opt in, I guess, basically to his original 4-year, $144 million deal left anyways, on hopes that they'll talk an extension later at that point. But David, let's have you talk about the Bellinger one, because that one's going to be a little bit shorter before we get to the Cole one, and you're our resident Cubs fan here.
Yeah, so Cody, it seems, really likes Chicago and really likes the Cubs. I think that's kind of evident because financially, I don't know that this is a great decision. He's the best free center fielder on this market by miles, right? How much better is Cody Bellinger than Harrison Bader right now? Like a lot, right? Even the 110 WRC plus version of Cody Bellinger. And Cody will not be playing center field this year unless Pete Crow Armstrong goes down with an injury. So questionable financial decision, but he still gets $28 million this year. And next offseason, he'll enter theoretically as a corner outfielder, I would assume. But he'll play a lot of right field at this moment. And he's either going to spell Michael Busch at first base some perhaps, and there could be some other potential options on the market there. But really, this is Cody Bellinger trying to stay where he likes to be. I think that he is regretting not taking a longer term deal last offseason. Felt like that Scott Boras was pushing for a bigger deal that wasn't the one the Cubs offered, and then they kind of worked in this player option deal. It seems like Cody likes where he is. I'm not surprised by this, but I question whether he will be able to market himself as a center fielder after he does not play center field for a full season next year. I think he still could have this offseason, but next year he'll be 30. Athleticism probably starting to decline a little bit. I'm not saying he couldn't do it, but it's a lot harder to do so once you're a year removed from playing center field, where everybody's seen, he can still play center field. Like he played good center field. It wasn't elite. It wasn't Pete Crow Armstrong. It was good center field for the Cubs. I just don't see him being able to market that next year, and that'll hinder his free agent value next offseason. So that's my thought on the Cody thing.
Yeah, I'll give a brief thought. I'm with you on a lot of that, David. I haven't really thought of the angle of how bad this free agent class is from the center field position too much. I expected him to opt in because, he probably feels like he can put up that 2023 season again, and he really took a big step back from that. He's kind of what I expect him to be at this point. Like, I think he's a little bit above average hitter at this point, and this is kind of what he is. And he had a little bit what will end up being kind of an outlier season in 2023, but he probably feels like he can put up that 2023 again. And he dealt with injuries a little bit this year too, which I think is something that probably worries teams a little bit about signing him as a center fielder anyways, because he kind of quit playing center later in the season. I know they brought up Pete Crow Armstrong, but it's not like Pete Crow Armstrong was like super, super ready. He was pretty rough at the plate for a while. He got better at the end of the season, but Bellinger, I think, is he probably feels like if he can put up that 2023 again, he can really get paid, because it would be 3 straight years of being pretty good and 2 straight years of two of the 3 being really good, and the other one having a little bit of injury involved in it. So I think if he feels like he can kind of make people think he's more consistent than he had been, if he can have a good 2025 season in Chicago, and he's got another opt out. So, and he'll still only be 30. So, it's not like he's, a 35-year-old and every year is the end of the world. It's still definitely something where you're not, super thrilled to be, you're not super thrilled that he's getting older, but it's not like, it's the difference between 29 and 30 is not as big as the difference between, 35 and 36. So,
sure.
I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised either way on this one. I was about to put on our little prediction sheet when we had him on there, opt in, but I ended up putting something else. But yeah, I mean, it was plenty good. It's good for him, good for the Cubs. I mean, he's a good player. So
2 very quick points. One being he played the same number of games this year as he did in 2020, and 2 being the Pete Crow Armstrong thing, to push back on that just from I watched all the games this year. It wasn't a Cody thing. It was PCA defensively. Didn't matter how he was hitting. Was always going to play center field once he came up, and he was ready in AAA. He was hitting. He was ready. He came up, he struggled again at the plate, got it going by the end of the season. He looks really good, but it was not a Cody thing. And Scott Boras will tell you that. The Cubs will tell you that. I don't think this isn't a travesty. You'll see it from Cubs fans. This is horrible. The Cubs can't do anything now. That's not the truth. That's not the case.
I don't know about that.
But I like Cody Bellinger. Yeah. I can't wait to get to watch him again. That's a good thing. It doesn't mean it takes away a few of my potential dreams. Probably the Juan Soto dream is dead. But that was a dream. So I'm good.
Yeah. The thing that I think with Cody, and I'll make it really short too, is he maybe playing right field is going to benefit him a little bit more because it's going to take him off his legs from center field as much. That way he might get a little bit more power from that part. Like playing center field, that does get heavy on your legs a little bit, right? And even then, even if you do go out to the market, it's not like you're talking about a career center fielder that's now making the move to right field, right? This is a guy who's making a move to right field, which is a position he won an MVP in. And then also in the back of his pocket, if he were to go out there, he could say, "Hey, I'm a good center fielder. You know, I'm a probably good to above average defensive right fielder. Oh, and then at the end of the day, even if I'm aging, I can go and play first base for you."
Yeah.
Like, so I think it's all about hoping you put up a bigger year again. Like, and I think he had that hope. I think it was an oblique injury or something that he dealt with this year.
He broke his rib. He like bounced off of the wall in center field and broke his rib. And that's actually what put PCA up.
So I think it's just about like, hey, I'm going to go in, I'm going to play right field, probably be healthier this year. Then I'll go out to the market and I can market myself as an average center fielder, an above average right fielder, or even a first base option if you want me to. And I have all three of those because then it gives you some versatility in that deal. And I think it makes you more attractive. And like Matt said, he'll still only be like 30. So like there's plenty of upside there. But okay, so let's jump to talking about our free agents predictions because this is what we're going to spend a lot of time on.
Are we going to jump Gerrit Cole or are we going to
skip
Gerrit Cole?
We can briefly just
breeze Gerrit Cole.
Gerrit Cole, So Gerrit Cole opted out of the rest of his contract, and the Yankees had there was a weird clause in there where the Yankees could void that opt out by adding 1 year to the end of his deal. And the Yankees said, we don't really want to do that. And then Gerrit Cole said, well, I'll just come pitch for the Yankees anyways on the same deal I was on. So the Yankees kind of called his bluff, I guess. I'm sure Gerrit Cole probably wanted to stay with the Yankees. He's been very good there. I'm sure the Yankees weren't super thrilled to give him another year, considering that Gerrit Cole wasn't quite as good this year as he has been, and he also had that injury, which was kind of a weird injury with his elbow. So I think they were probably just a little bit concerned about giving him that extra year when he's like 37 or whatever it will be, 38, upper 30s. Yeah. So it makes sense on both sides there to just come back on the same deal he was on, but I guess it got rid of I guess that option's gone now. So he's there for, I think it's 4 more years.
4 more years at least. And that they will talk an extension apparently. So.
Yeah. I mean, they could give him an extension too, but yeah, there's not a ton that happened there. It was just kind of some drama.
He was never leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Robert Murray on his YouTube show today said Gerrit Cole is very important to the Yankees clubhouse. That's a clubhouse that just went to the World Series, right? So I think you guys are right. Gerrit Cole was never leaving, but I will say, the potential for an older starting pitcher. We've seen it a few times. Older starting pitchers do perform well. Just they can kind of stave off that I don't want to call it an aging curve, but kind of like the aging curve where they're just kind of the same guy every year. We've seen it with Verlander, we've seen it with Scherzer, we've seen it with DeGrom. The biggest concern is as they age, that body starts to break down, and Cole isn't that 33 starts a year Cy Young guy anymore. Yeah. How early does that start? It might have already started this year, but I think when he's pitching, he's going to be one of the best pitchers in baseball every time. Well, so this is great for the Yankees. Obviously, it's just the shenanigans with him opting out was if Gerrit Cole is available, anybody who's wanting their team to hunt for a starting pitcher, that's a great guy to go get.
Yeah.
But he was always going to stay with the Yankees, so it was a moot point.
Yeah. Well, the last point there, Gerrit Cole, it feels like the type of pitcher that is kind of that freak that will keep pitching
Yeah.
Yeah.
well until he's really old, like some of those guys you
Right.
mentioned.
And Cole, he was a Yankee fan. Like
Yeah,
that's one part that I
he's-
think
he's-
people like.
yeah.
He was a diehard Yankee fan from a young
He wants to be
kid,
there.
like from a young age. Like he wants to be there. He was never leaving, and they'll work out some sort of an extension to make it happen. So, okay. Now that
I just can't believe he won't go into the Hall of Fame with a Pittsburgh Pirates hat on.
Anyways, okay, so let's jump to the free agency predictions now. And let me preference by saying this because some people are going to probably freak out over the order that we have these in. This isn't no like specific order. Like I didn't rank these guys when I was putting them on the sheet. I literally just pulled up like Spotrac, and it was just how they were in order, and I just went down like that. Okay,
Start
so
with
like
number 25, right?
yeah. So when you
we
were
freaking out about the order while doing the sheets. So.
yeah, so don't
Don't
worry
worry.
about that. Okay, I just want to preference that when you guys see that we're going to like Teoscar Hernandez third, and that's not a Dodger bias there. Okay, like
Yeah.
Anyways, so let's start with the big fish. And it kind of transitions from that Yankee team that just went to the World Series.
Mhm.
Obviously, they have the big free agent. It's Juan Soto. What is going to happen there? And I guess I'll just give my real quick thoughts because I'm the one that has the outlier here. So I'll give my perspective, and then we'll jump to the other side. My thought is Juan Soto is not leaving New York. I just don't have him staying with the Yankees. I think Juan Soto is going to take the biggest deal he could possibly get, and I don't think that Steve Cohen is going to get outbid for Juan Soto. If Juan Soto wants to go back to the Yankees, he's going to have to turn down less money or more money, from the Mets than he is to go back to the Yankees. Like Steve Cohen, this is the type of guy we saw him try and do it with Yamamoto, who turned down less money to go to the Dodgers. Like he's going to try and go for this guy who is a rare elite talent at such a young age still. Steve Cohen's going to go all out for that. So I have him going to the Mets because I just think Scott Boras and that is going to make him take the biggest deal. So that's my thought.
See, I have the same thought, except for you say that, right?
Sorry. And I have him at 15 years.
What is it?
700 million.
All right. Here's the deal, right? I hear that deal. And I am Scott Boras at this point. I'm pretending to be Scott Boras for 5 seconds. I promise it's going
I'm
somewhere.
sorry.
But I'm taking that deal back to Brian Cashman and the Yankees and the Steinbrenners, and I'm saying, hey, we have 700 million guaranteed from the Mets. You better beat it. And the Yankees do. I don't see a world where the New
They don't
York
want to pay him more than
Yankees
Aaron Judge, okay?
It doesn't. I don't see a world where the New York Yankees do not get the last laugh here, and that's for any team. Now, first, every team owner should be acting like Steve Cohen. That Damien just said Steve Cohen acts. Every single team owner should be tripping over themselves to offer Juan Soto $50 million a year. However, it's not going to happen. There's going to be like 3 teams involved. It's mostly going to be these 2 New York teams. The New York Yankees are going to have the last laugh. They are going to get the last offer. If the New York Yankees let Juan Soto walk to the Mets, I will be flabbergasted. There is just no way that they let him walk. They'll just they have to come over the top at the end. I just can't see it happening. And it's the New York Yankees. They can't get outbid.
My one thought is that I think the Yankees have more holes than bringing Juan Soto back.
Oh, they
and
do.
If they give him that much money, I'm just not sure that then they would spend the money on the rest of the holes that they need or that they have. And I just think that it fits. But you're totally right. It's going to be a battle between these 2 New York teams. Anyways, so you had it. I have it at 15 years, 700. You had 14 for 725.
Yeah, I have 725. I also think that Boras is going to be out here trying to set a higher number than Ohtani. I think there will be major deferrals involved. I think there's going to be a bunch of crazy stuff.
Yeah. Let's bring in the low ball offer Matt has.
So I'm on the logic of where he's going. I'm with David. I just do not see the Yankees letting him go. I think he wants to be there too. I think he enjoyed playing there this year. The fans, he likes that environment. He thrives in that environment, and he had a great year. He's a great fit for Yankee Stadium. He set a career high in home runs this year. I just do not see him leaving the Yankees. Now on the money thing, a couple things that make me think it's going to be a little bit lower than what y'all are expecting. Number one, Juan Soto is an incredible player, and he's a historic player, and he's a future Hall of Famer most likely. But Ohtani is just a whole different animal. And Ohtani, with his the cultural phenom he is, and the markets he brings in from overseas, is such a big deal with revenue that it makes that $700 million contract feel a lot more successful. It feels like it's a lot more fair. Um, and also, I don't know that Juan Soto has been pretty, for the most part, has been pretty. His with the money situation with him, he's been pretty like aggressive with not doing stuff like I don't think he's going to do the type of deferrals that Ohtani did. I don't think
No,
that Soto is going to do like this weird $2 million a year until whatever deal.
I
Uh,
don't think anyone can
I
except
don't
Ohtani.
right, and Ohtani, a lot of that goes back to that marketing aspect as well, where Ohtani's
Yeah.
got all these endorsement deals. He's making all this money anyways. I don't think Juan Soto has that at this stage. So I don't know that a team is going to pony up and pay him $700 million with no deferrals or lower deferrals, and with the fact that he's more of just a really elite baseball player than this cultural phenomenon. So I've got him at 12 years, 600 million. That would still be like $150 million more than the second highest contract ever paid, which I think is a pretty fair amount for Juan Soto. And he's 26 years old, right? So that would take him to age 38, I believe. So I mean, I just don't know that he's going to get that $700 million. And you called it a lowball offer, and I will say this too.
It was a joke from ours.
Yeah.
I know, but a lot of the projections for his contract are lower than that.
Yeah.
So
I
you go
think
look at like the Fangraphs projections came out today, and I believe they had him at at 576 million over 12 years. So I'm higher than they are.
well, was it Yamamoto in like 190 or something last year, and he
Yeah,
ended up in
like-
over 300, like
Yeah.
325.
I think bidding, once you get bidding going on,
Yeah.
it's gonna
Yep.
go up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even if
And
it's
with these two
even if
teams
it's-
specifically.
yeah, and even if it's a lower, like you want to say the lower overall, like the first thing that people are going to try is Soto's going to try and beat Ohtani's AAV after the deferrals,
Right.
which was
Yeah.
46.3, I think, or something, or 43.6. I dyslexia, I forget those two, but
Yeah.
he's going to want to try and get like probably 46.6 or something million, which is kind of where my number comes in at, but
Yeah.
like that. So yours is at 50, so I don't disagree. Like it could be something like that. I just think that once bidding starts happening, like you're going to get the extra years. Like, and plus I see Soto going to trying to get a deal past age 38.
Yeah,
Like-
I think this is going to be a 14, 15-year deal.
Yeah, because that only takes
Yeah.
him to age 40 to 41, which is where you see some of these big time contracts go anyways. So that's I think you're going to get the longer length.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's an opt-out built into this contract as well, in a few years, right? Age 29,
I think
30.
age 30. Yeah,
Yeah.
4-year opt out, I could see it.
I think you're giving Soto every single option, right? You're giving him the opt-out, you're giving him a no trade, you're giving him everything you could possibly give the player.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
both the Mets and the Yankees are going to do that, and then it comes down to his choice, right? And Matt and I both think he chooses Mets. Damian thinks he chooses Matt and I think he chooses Yankees. Damian thinks he chooses Mets. It makes sense. We'll see.
All right, so this is a perfect segue because then let's now jump over to our second free agent, who we're going to be talking about the same teams with here.
There's other teams involved in this.
Wait.
We'll
We're going
get
to talk about the same teams. We're just going to flip the role,
Mhm.
and you guys are going to have the Mets. Both of you guys pick the Mets
Right.
here, and I pick the Yankees, and that's with Alex Bregman. I think the Yankees get a 6-year, $175 million deal done with Alex Bregman. So my reasoning, and I explained it to Matt a little bit before, and you'll see a little bit later. I'll explain it once we get to the other guys. I think the Yankees have more holes, which I talked about there in a little bit. I think their infield defense was atrocious this year. And I think they make moves on both corners to get the best defensive players at those positions that are available, right? Alex Bregman just won the Gold Glove for AL third baseman this year. Now they have Jazz Chisholm, but I think Jazz Chisholm slides back to second base, fits his position very well. And then they slide Bregman in on the left side of the infield with Volpe. I think you have a very good defensive infield there. And I think Bregman would thrive in the New York atmosphere as well. I think the stadium still fits him pretty well. Especially he has a good approach that he can take the ball the opposite way if he needs to. You don't usually see him hit for power there because the Crawford boxes are so easy to hit homers in for him. But I think he drives some homers that way too. So I think the Yankees make a ton of sense once they miss out in my scenario on Juan Soto to go get, one of the best backup options you can offensively in Alex Bregman.
Yeah, and I think I'm with you, Damian, on the Mets going after Juan Soto. I think Steve Cohen after this season will be chomping at the bit to try to spend some money. They had a lot come off the books. So I have the Mets getting Alex Bregman after they miss on Soto. I think he's going to spend after they miss that one, I think he's going to spend on multiple guys. And while the Mets had Mark Vientos at third this year, who had a breakout year and was very good, especially late in the season, I think that Vientos probably fits better at first base to replace Alonso. So they would then need a third baseman, and Bregman's a really good defensive third baseman to come in, can hit for some power, replace the power that you lose with Alonso, probably have that good plate discipline that the Mets seem to like in a lot of guys. I think that he'll get something in the range of 6-year 180. I don't know that his market's going to be quite as big as maybe some people would think when they think of that name. He is kind of a unique hitter that has kind of feasted on the Crawford boxes at times, power wise. But he's very good. He's a very good player. And he's had a couple of down years in there too. But 6 years, 180, I think that's pretty fair for him. I believe that's more than what Chapman got, so by a decent amount. So I think that's probably a good comp to base off of, and he'll get a little bit more than what Chapman got.
You brushed over exactly why I think Bregman is a Met. Matt, is the plate approach thing. I think the Mets have been targeting this type of hitter, one that takes pitches, doesn't strike out a lot. They've gone and gotten Lindor. They've gone and gotten Brandon Nimmo, right? And retained Brandon Nimmo. They've gotten Starling Marte, Jeff McNeil. They're going to let Pete Alonso walk, who is not that kind of hitter. So I just think this is a perfect fit, especially because, like you mentioned, they can slide Vientos over. He's under control for a long time, opens up the hole. Brett Beatty doesn't seem to be able to take over that third base hole. I think he's trade bait this offseason. Bregman, it fits right in. And especially as Matt and I have the Yankees getting Soto, they have money to spend. I think the Mets come over the top. I think Bregman's going to get like more money than he is expected to get. That's kind of been my thought process the whole way on Bregman, is whatever contract he gets is going to feel like too much for some reason. And then I don't know if it's going to Rendon itself where it is way too much, or if it will balance out to where I think almost 66 years for 180 might even be underselling the skill of Alex Bregman, who is a Gold Glove defender at third base, and he's a 20-25 homer guy who walks a ton, doesn't strike out, like this, a really good player. So there's a threshold where I think this deal goes from being a really good deal, where I think you guys are in an area where this is like a bargain deal, and there should be more teams than the Mets, Yankees, whoever involved. Like I think the Astros get involved at that price. I think the Mets have to take it up a little bit. That's why I've got him at 7 for 220. I think you have to get to a point where you go, man, that might be a little too much for this guy, and that's where the Mets are going to go to.
Yeah, I will say Alex Bregman is 30 as well,
yeah.
So he's a little bit older than some of these other free agents. But
Juan Soto is a special case, 26-year-old free agents.
Well,
man,
even like Cody Bellinger's 28. Mm-hmm. So I mean,
yeah.
Okay, so let's jump over to talking about Teoscar Hernandez now, who did get the qualifying offer from the Dodgers today. So just to basically easily wrap it up, we all have him going back to the Dodgers. I think if you listen to him during everything else, he wants to be there. I think it makes too much sense for him not to be for him to go back. The impact he had on the clubhouse, the impact he had on the field, he fits the team really well. Shohei loves him, so obviously that's going to get him some extra money there. But I have him declining the qualifying offer and working out a 3-year, $60 million deal with the Dodgers. It might be a little bit under market value for what you would think coming off of the year he had, but I think that he's going to be willing to take a little bit less to go back to the Dodgers rather than take more to go somewhere else, just because his big priority was winning. Obviously, they did that, and he loves the city and the clubhouse and everything there. So, with a lot of that team locked in, I think he probably takes a little bit less to go back there. So that's my reasoning.
Either he takes the qualifying offer or they work out a deal just to keep him at the same salary. I think that's what makes sense. Qualifying offer is $2 million below what he made last year. So I think they ultimately work something out. Just be like, look, pay me the same, right? That actually might be less than market value for. He got 3.5 WAR last year. Like that might be less than market value for this guy to keep him on the same salary. But he loves the Dodgers. Dodgers pretty clearly love him. It's a match made in heaven. There's no way he doesn't play in a Dodgers uniform next year. This is my lock of the free agent predictions is Tio back to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say, Matt, real quick, is the reason he got that value was because it was only a one-year deal.
Right.
Where I think the multi-year deal drops the AAV some, to where like the Red Sox last year offered him like 3 years at $18 million, and he turned that down to go to the Dodgers on the 1 year, whatever 23 it was or something. So that's why I think he probably takes that little bit. Like he probably should get 23 in the market now, multi-year, but I think he probably drops it down a little bit. That was my thing. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I think I've got him as a similar comp to what Marcelo Zuna got in 2020 after his 2020 season when he signed that extension with the Braves. With inflation a little bit, I think it might be a little bit more for Teoscar. I got him at 4 years, 75. Going back to the Dodgers, the one thing that I would maybe think that the Dodgers wouldn't be, it's not just a shoe-in, is that Teoscar Hernandez is a pretty poor defender in left field. And there's as he ages, he will probably have to DH fairly soon, and there's no chance he DHs for the Dodgers. So I think that there's some question marks about his fit in 2 or 3 years from now. I think he can fill in left field next year and be fine like he was this year. I mean, he was pretty bad in the outfield, but his bat was good, and he was totally worthwhile as a player this year. But, going forward, is his defense going to go from being like pretty bad but playable to Jorge Soler, like we talked about earlier, where it doesn't even matter that he's got a 130 WRC plus, he's going to have a 0 WAR. So I do think the Dodgers bring him back on that 4 year 75, but I wouldn't be shocked if they had just a little bit of hesitancy with the DH situation there. But definitely Teoscar Hernandez is worthy of a pretty good contract, and he made a good decision to do the 1 year deal last year, and he'll get a multi-year deal, and it'll be something pretty substantial. So,
yeah. Okay, so let's go and talk about Blake Snell now. I have the Yankees basically righting the wrong that they didn't do last year. There was the talks about that 6 year, $150 million deal they offered him last year. And I don't know if they put the deadline on it. He didn't take it. They ended up pivoting to Stroman. I think they're probably looking back at that saying, man, we wish we just kept Blake Snell's offer out there instead of Stroman's, because Stroman didn't throw a single pitch for them in the ALCS or the World Series. Blake Snell had a great year. I think that he's going to get a 4 year, $130 million deal from the Yankees. Not the length he wants, but I think he'll get a good AAV from them. And he'll just go there because it makes too much sense. They had the talks last year. He wanted to go there last year. It didn't work out. He had a great season. I think it lines up exactly with what they want.
Yeah. Blake Snell screams Mets to me.
Yeah.
He's a guy that the Mets
Here we are talking about
we
New York
haven't talked
again.
about a different team.
I know. Well,
don't worry, guys.
Yeah, we're gonna
get I got
it.
you. I got you.
I
guys.
don't think I have the Mets or the Yankees with anybody else. So this is the last one. But I have him with the Mets. Yeah, 3 years, $100 million with an opt out, and I guess after that first year or maybe the second year, I think it's going to be real similar to what he got this year, because he didn't answer the questions. We know Blake Snell can be very good, but we have the questions of how durable is he, because he seems to not pitch very many innings every single year, and also how consistent he is. And he was fantastic after coming back from injury, but he started off so terribly, and then he had an injury. You wonder if he probably needs to put up a full season. And if I was Blake Snell, I would go sign this deal early, because you want to have a regular off season. You don't want to have to deal with all this BS. Yeah. And I mean, I don't that cost you a lot of money dealing with the BS last year of this late signing, and you're halfway through spring training and you don't have a real spring training, and
Yep.
that cost you half your season basically. So you don't want to do that again. And I think that I'm hoping that Blake Snell will tell Scott Boras to screw off when he asks him to do that again.
Yeah.
But 3 years, $100 million with the opt out. The Mets have seemed to like this type of deal too. They did this with Scherzer and Verlander both, a similar type of deal with a very high AAV, but but a shorter term deal, and having an opt out in there. So um, they've liked to bring in some of these guys that have question marks on the mound too, to short term deals. Think they can fix them. They did a pretty good job of it this year with Mania and Severino, both really having good seasons after being pretty rough the year or two before. And I think this would be a good move for them to get a guy that they really need pitching. So bringing Blake Snell in would be a solid risk for them.
Folks, I have differed from New York or LA, and I am going to sign Blake Snell somewhere else. And it is going to be an upstart young team that made the playoffs this season, but needed some help for their starting pitching behind their ace. And what a perfect fit to me that Blake Snell is. Detroit. Detroit's got some cash to spend. They are typically a team that goes out and spends. And what better place for Blake Snell to go than a place where the ball never seems to fly out of the park? Where he went from he went from San Francisco, right? This was his last year. Did a lot of really good run prevention there, and I just feel like he works super nicely in there behind Tariq Skubal. In Detroit. I've got him for 4 years or 120 or something like that. One of the high AAV type deals for 4 years. I think that seems pretty reasonable. But Detroit's going to have to make a move here at some point. They just made the playoffs. They've clearly got some momentum. Take that momentum. Go get yourself a Blake Snell. He's not attached to a qualifying offer. This is a team that can definitely weather the weird Blake Snell bad starts, right? That we've talked about a number of times where he'll just not have it walk 10 guys. Detroit's a team good enough that we've seen that they've got the swing starters to bring in from the bullpen to sponge those occasional bad outings. And Blake Snell can maybe throw it in the zone a little bit more in Detroit, given that that's a park that does not tend to hold the ball very well. I think it's a pretty good match. And if Detroit's going to make a move, right, I think this AL Central could get competitive really quickly, because I got the Royals on here making some moves too. I think this is going to be that division's going to be a little bit stronger in terms of free agency than maybe we're projecting, or maybe the general consensus is projecting at this point. But yeah, Detroit, Blake Snell, I think it's a good fit.
Good one. And we should mention it real quick while we're on the AL Central, because we've totally forgot to before. Yeah. The Royals did re-sign Michael Wacha to a deal.
That was
to keep him there in that rotation with Cole Reagans and Seth Lugo. So good fit there. Having the Tigers get Blake Snell, though, that's a big play. They probably do need something like that. I have them sign in somebody later, but I don't hate that at all. So let's go ahead and talk about, I think this one to me was probably the hardest person to place anywhere, and that is Corbin Burnes. He got the qualifying offer as well from the Orioles. We know about his success from Milwaukee to Baltimore. Corbin Burnes is not a guy you know much about. He's very quiet. You don't know what he likes. If he likes, he's a West Coast guy, but does he like the West Coast? Does he like the Midwest? We don't know how he liked his time with the Orioles. So I basically just went with the assumption that, like, hey, the new Orioles ownership, you got him in there for a year. I think you're going to want to lock up the ace again. You don't want to allow the guy, like, that team's good. You want to keep your guys in there, especially with the question marks around with, Bradish is out. That too, you need pitching. So I have them going 7 years, $215 million to re-sign their ace in Corbin Burnes, keep him in Baltimore. I think it's a good deal for each side, but I wouldn't be surprised if he decides to go elsewhere either.
Yeah, I'm with you, Damian. I have him go back to Baltimore as well. I think he's a interesting case because he hasn't been quite as dominant from a strikeout stuff standpoint, but he's still been extremely good.
Yeah.
And the I'm with you on the ownership thing. I think the new ownership's probably going to want to spend a little bit of money, and they've got money to spend right now with a lot of their core being young. I think this might actually be a front-loaded deal, which is kind of rare.
Could be.
And they can spend some payroll now and then maybe try to lock up a couple of their other guys long term.
Yeah, so I'm going to disagree with you guys again, but not that you've made bad points, because I think Baltimore does play in the upper tier pitching market. I think they have to this offseason, but I think they're not going to be willing to do the $200 million deal right now. Um, I think that Corbin Burnes is getting some really unfair criticism because his cutter's stuff grades went from being the best cutter in baseball than Class A to like a league average cutter, and this last year. And it's like, if that continues, he's going to stop preventing runs as efficiently, right? He's not going to be as good of a pitcher. My hope, of course, as a fan of a team that is hunting starting pitching, and I didn't pick them to my team, but as a fan of a team, and you other fans of teams who will be hunting starting pitching should agree with this, I hope that that suppresses his market just enough for my team to get in there. And I think a lot of teams could potentially get in there if that market gets suppressed into December and January, which I think it will. And once we get to December and January and Corbin Burnes isn't signed and he's saddled with a qualifying offer, and that offer might drop below where I have it projected at 8 years, 200 million. But one of these teams, and I'm going to go with Buster Posey, the new GM for the Giants, getting Corbin Burnes on board with Matt Chapman, Patrick Bailey, the core built in San Francisco, and the natural suppression of the ballpark on the Bay. And not to mention that I think Corbin Burnes is going to make adjustments. He's not going to keep throwing the same bad cutter. He's a good pitcher with a really good slider that is still graded well above average. He's going to figure it out. You should want your team to sign Corbin Burnes. I want my team to sign Corbin Burnes. I'm going to project the Giants to sign Corbin Burnes and maybe jump this bad potential market cratering that I kind of am thinking is going to happen. But give me Corbin Burnes all day. This is a bulldog guy who could throw 200 innings. Like they don't come around that often, and they don't reach free agency much at all, right? And that's usually the kind of pitcher that goes for 300 plus million. You might be able to get him for 200-ish million dollars. It's a bargain in my book. So you should be cheering for your team to sign Corbin Burnes.
A throwback pitcher who is very good, goes deep into games, and he can strike people out, but he could also show that he can get outs without needing the K. That it's going to be very, very valuable, especially if the rumors of what they're wanting to manipulate some future implications on starting pitching about what guys have to throw 100 pitches or 6 innings or something like that. Like Corbin Burnes is going to fit teams very, very well, and I hate that you haven't go to the Giants. So let's go over to talking about Max Fried now, who did get the qualifying offer from Atlanta. Matt, this is your from the Braves here. So what do you have Max Fried going for and where?
Yeah, I've been a Max Fried defender for a long time. I think he's a guy that I was high on when he was coming up. I really liked him. He had a great time with the Braves, but I don't know that he's going to get the same kind of free agency that a typical pitcher of his probably profile would, or maybe not profile, but of his magnitude would. I mean, this guy has had, I believe he's a 2-time Cy Young finalist. So, like, he's finished top 3 twice. And he's been incredible, and he's been a great postseason performer too. But he's a guy that has dealt with some injuries. He's had Tommy John surgery before. He's pretty removed from that, but he's had forearm issues in back-to-back seasons now. And I think that's going to affect his market, as well as just his lack of swing and miss that he has. He still has an elite curveball, but he just doesn't get the kind of swing and miss that a lot of these top free agent pitchers that get paid a lot do. So you kind of combine the lack of innings eating and that, and I think his market's a little bit lower. But I haven't gone to the Dodgers. I had a hard time placing him because I don't think that he's with his market being like it is. I think it's just gonna be kind of weird. And I think he grew up a Dodgers fan. He's from Southern California. He's idolized Kershaw and Sandy Koufax is the guy he modeled his pitches after. And I think the Dodgers have been pretty willing to take on a risk injury pitcher, in the past, and they feel like they can manage their innings through the season. And if they have enough of them, one of them's going to make it, I guess. So out of Kershaw and Glasnow and maybe Max Fried, one of them will make it to the postseason. But I guess the more you got, the better chance you got that one's there. And yeah, I mean, I just had him going to the Dodgers. I think he probably wants to play there. I don't see the Braves bringing him back with the risk profile. I think that's probably my second team that I would think of. Is him just going back to Atlanta because they do need a pitcher, but I don't know. It seemed like it was over with the Braves when he at the end of the season, and but yeah, y'all can go ahead and move on. Y'all's team's probably got a good chance too.
So here's the deal, right? You look at from 2021 through 2024, right? In terms of pure run prevention, there's a bunch of guys who've done some relieving. There's a bunch of guys who've been hurt a lot. Brandon Woodruff, Clayton Kershaw. The only guy who's made at least 100 starts in the top 8 is Max Fried in terms of ERA since 2021. Number 9 is Corbin Burnes, who we just talked about. So Max Fried is really good at pitching and really good at preventing runs. He doesn't get there with the flashiest of stuff. And he pitches lefty. And I'll tell you who that reminds me of is John Lester.
Yeah, that's the guy I was thinking of.
He's not as durable as Big John. That is for sure. Matt has already said that. But if Max Fried were as durable as John Lester, he would be getting the highest starting pitching contract this offseason. The fact that it is not going to be that high means that it is, in theory, a bit of a bargain offer. And we know Jed Hoyer loves him some bargain deals. So I'm sending him to the Cubs. I think there's already been some smoke around this.
Just kidding.
Even though you've got him exactly to the Cubs as well. I put it right around the Lester deal. I think Lester's deal was 6 for 155. I have this one at 6 for 160. With inflation, it's not as big of a deal as Lester got, but it's right there, and it kind of feels like that kind of deal. And he slots right in there. Now that gives the Cubs 3 lefties at the top of the rotation. I don't love that, but there are 3 lefties with differing stuff that don't really platoon split. All 3 of them have really, really good elevated fastballs that run cut action. Cubs love that. Fried is a really good fit there. This is the kind of the right thing. Now I still hope the Cubs go get Corbin Burnes, but I kind of feel like they're just going to Dansby Swanson it and say this is their guy and go get him.
Yeah, I have Max Fried going to the Cubs as well. I have him 7 years, 170 million. I thought about the Dodgers because it just seems too easy. Like, it's been the place that people have been saying for 3 years. Max Fried's going to end up a Dodger at that point. Like, him watching Jack Flaherty just win a World Series with who are their really good friends, watching him win a World Series in LA, I feel like that could run some into it as well. But I think the Cubs need to be in on a top-level starting pitcher this offseason. And I just think Corbin Burnes at the end of the day might be too rich for what they're thinking. Like,
I hate that, but you're probably right.
Yeah, it's the way they've operated, right? Like,
right.
They aren't a team that's consistently showed, like, should they have been at the top of the shortstop market like that year when everyone was out there, when it was Correa, Turner, and Xander? Yeah, they should have been at the top of the market, right? But they went and got
the best. They got the best WAR of any of them so far.
Well, yeah, but it's where Xander was hurt.
Yeah,
Correa has his stuff. Like,
it's
objectively
a thing, but yes,
objectively looking at it at the time, it was they got the worst one of the elite ones, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just think that they're not going to pay for Corbin Burnes. They're not going to pay for Blake Snell, but like Max Fried should be right there along with what they're willing to pay. And I think it's just going to be another one of those scenarios where, like, hey, we're not going to get the top of the market, but we'll get like the bottom of the top, if that makes any sense. Like, so I have them 7 years, 170 million. It's about 24 point something AAV wise. I think it's right in line with what probably should happen. And like you said, I'm not worried that it's, Steele, Fried, Imanaga. Like, I think there are 3 major different looks there. And at the end of the day, they're good pitchers, right? Like, if you have good pitchers, it's going to work out. It doesn't matter. So I have them going there. But Let's jump to the next guy who I just mentioned was a friend of Max Fried, who just won the World Series with the Dodgers, and that is Jack Flaherty. I have him. I know he would like to stay in Los Angeles. I'm not sure if Los Angeles would be willing to pay that right now with the other concerns they have and then other free agents available. So I have Flaherty getting a deal from the Red Sox, a 5-year, $110 million deal. I don't have any real rhyme or reason why I picked the Red Sox. It was kind of one where like, hey, they probably need a starting pitcher, and Flaherty just kind of makes sense for the type of guy they would go and get. So this is kind of like a pick a certain team out of a hat, and it just happened to be the Red Sox for me. So
I would be surprised if Breslow goes and signs Flaherty as his first big name. But I don't hate it. I think the Red Sox do make some plays in free agency, but I just think they're going to be more opportunistic and try to. They've already offered Nick Pivetta the qualifying offer. We'll talk about that later. But he is. I mean, we think he's going to accept it. That might limit their spending in the rotation.
Yeah. They have Giolito coming back too.
Right. Yeah, Giolito will be back as well. I think this is where the Mets go. I think the Mets miss on Juan Soto. They end up with some money to throw around because they piled it up to go after Soto, and I think they spend it on Bregman and Jack Flaherty. I rolled with 5 years, 120. I seem to be on the high end of these contracts. I think these guys should get paid, I guess. It's fine. I'll happily be the guy who says the players should get paid more because they always should, right? They're the ones we watch. But I'm not watching Jed Hoyer's pocketbook. I'm watching the Cubs. I want to see the best players on the field. Flaherty's good. He's, we saw him in the playoffs. We talked about him a lot. As a starter for the Mets, I assume at least one of Severino or Manaea, possibly both, except that qualifying offer, and that may change this answer. So ask me again later, but for now, I'll stick with Flaherty the Mets.
Yeah, I've got Flaherty going. I've actually got him going to the Reds, not the Red Sox.
That's interesting.
I have a feeling the Reds are gonna get a pitcher, and they had last year they signed Frankie Montas to about a $20 million deal. I think it might have been even a little bit more than that on a 1-year deal. So they're willing to put that kind of AAV on a pitcher. And I don't know. I mean, they just gave Nick Martinez the qualifying offer today, which I thought was pretty wild. I mean, that's a $20 million. And I just don't feel like if the Reds were not willing to spend it all this year, that they would have limited their ability to, by giving that qualifying offer. So that would be surprising to me. But I mean, I just had a hard time putting Flaherty anywhere. He's been inconsistent. This year was really good with both the Tigers and the Dodgers. He kind of struggled in the postseason at times, but I mean, he's been so inconsistent in his career. He's had a couple of stretches of seasons where he was like an ace level pitcher with the Cardinals that 1 year, and then this year with the Tigers, and then and then with the Dodgers. But he's also had like 3 or 4 years where he was pretty terrible. So, and he's dealt with a lot of injuries. So I don't think he's going to get any kind of long term deal. And I don't know. I just had a feeling the Reds might try to pounce and think they got something. The Reds are low key really good at pitching development too. I know they haven't been great on the mound the last few years, but I think a lot of that's a talent issue. I mean, this is a team that really turned around. They developed a lot of guys like Tyler Mahle, Luis Castillo, and they really turned around guys like Sonny Gray, who had really struggled for a couple years before he went there. And then also, you got to remember, Trevor Bauer had his best career season with the Reds after being good with the Guardians, but he was just a different animal with the Reds. So, this is a team that has done a pretty good job with pitching development at times, and I think that and Hunter Green, I mean, they've developed him as well. So, I think it just makes it makes sense to me. I mean, I don't know.
Well, and one thing is they didn't bring Terry Francona in to not try and compete.
No.
So like I think they're going to spend some money. I think they probably are a team to watch for Shane Bieber because of that Tito connection.
Yeah.
On a 1 year type Frankie Montas. Hey, here with an opt out. But I don't hate them trying to get another solid arm in Jack Flaherty, who will probably bring you a little bit more consistency at times. So that's not a bad call at all. Like the Reds probably are players in free agency. Okay, so let's talk about Gleyber Torres now. I have him going to the Mariners on a 3-year, $32 million deal. I think the Mariners are just looking for some sort of bat there, a couple bats probably even. And I think they have a hole at second base after the Jorge Polanco deal. I don't think many people are going to pay or be in the market for Gleyber Torres. I think the Mariners just make the most sense for that. So I just say Mariners 3 years, 32 million.
Yeah, I went with mine kind of thinking that this may be unfair, but the Cleveland Guardians needed a Gleyber Torres in their lineup in this postseason. That was what I was kind of thinking, right? A guy with some power that can they might have shifted places. I think Andres Gimenez, who just won the Gold Glove for the AL for second base,
Yeah.
could play shortstop, and then you could put Gleyber at second. Now I was looking, right? The Guardians had the 29th best shortstop performance this season, 67 WRC plus. If you slid over Jimenez's 86 and then slotted in Gleyber, who's above average at second base offensively, that's a pretty massive improvement, even if Jimenez isn't the Gold Glove elite defender that he is at second base. Even if he's just good over there at shortstop, which I think he would be, it'd be a massive improvement for the Guardians because Brian Rocchio is just not that guy. They need something, but I don't figure them to sign one of the big shortstops. So I figure sign the best available second baseman, move over your all-star second baseman to shortstop, and profit from there. So that's my assumption for the Guardians. 2 years, like 24 million, like 12 million a year.
Yeah, yeah. I've got him go to the Giants. They lose Tyro Estrada. They've really kind of struggled with their middle infield at times. Tyler Fitzgerald played really well at shortstop this year, but he also there's some signs that he kind of isn't as good as he played this year, like in his profile. So, I don't know. The Giants could probably use a pretty consistent hitter. Gleyber Torres reminds me just a little bit of Wilmer Flores. The kind of his profile and the way he's been in his past. And Wilmer Flores has been with the Giants for a while. They seem to like that type of player. Of course, they have a new front office, so who knows what Buster Posey's going to go after. But yeah, I mean, I got him at two-year, 28 million. He's kind of in that range of player the Giants have targeted over the past few years, where they've targeted some of the top free agents, but when they haven't gotten them, they have signed a lot of these shorter-term deals. You think of Michael Conforto. You think of when they signed Mitch Haniger. They've got they've gotten some of these types of guys. So I could see him. Jock Peterson's another one. I could see him going there for a short-term deal and see if he can. This is a guy that there's a world where Gleyber Torres has a couple of like really good seasons at some point too. He's
Yeah.
just kind of a decent player, and then he could have a couple of really good years at some point. So we'll see what happens with him, though. It'll be interesting with him and his free agency. It's kind of one that it's kind of hard to value him.
Yeah, he is a weird case. So let's go ahead and talk about Tanner Scott now. Probably the best reliever on the market at this point. And I have him going to the Yankees, a 5-year, $75 million deal. We've seen the Yankees before pay the likes of closers a la Aroldis Chapman. The one place where they kind of really struggled deep was left-handed reliever, especially in the postseason. Like it was Tim Hill or Nestor Cortez.
Yeah.
Like you can't really do that. And Luke Weaver had a breakout season and showed up that he could be a closer, right? Well, what better way to have a 1-2 closer punch lefty-righty than with Tanner Scott and Luke Weaver, who they've both shown the willingness that they don't have to close. Like Tanner Scott doesn't have to be the closer. He in San Diego when he went there, he wasn't the guy, but he could if he needed to. And I think it's just another weapon in that pen for the Yankees to use. And I think they're one of the few teams that are really willing to kind of pay up for this level of arm out of the bullpen. And obviously this is with them also losing Juan Soto. They have the extra money to spend some other places. So why not upgrade that bullpen even more, which they had, 3 guys, which I think 2 of them are free agents really this offseason. So I think that's a big need for them.
Yeah, I've got him actually going to the Royals. I think the Royals might want to rebuild kind of their, go with their strategy of like 2015, 2014, 2015 when they had that like crazy elite bullpen
Yeah.
for years and won a World Series. They definitely need a left-handed reliever. They've got a couple of good right-handed relievers in Schreiber and Ursag. I think they could probably use a lefty. Will Smith was the guy they signed this year, and that was not good. So they could probably use one. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like they're probably going to spend some money on somebody, but I can't really decide who. And I don't think it's going to be a really big deal. So I got them going and getting some bullpen help, try to really shore up um, the run prevention, and I think they'll probably go get some bats at some point too. They need to improve their offense, but I think they might go trade route for that. Um, I don't know. They might sign I think they'll hit it with quantity too. I think they'll sign a few at the lower end free agents and then go trade route. So, I thought 4 year, 50 million. It's about a little over 10 a year. So I think that's pretty fair for him. He's a really good reliever who has a chance to at times be like elite. His stuff is up there with the elites. So I think that, um, it could end up being I mean, Edwin Diaz and Josh Hader are getting paid like $100 million. And this guy's not at that level, but his stuff isn't that far off. If he has a really good year at some point, he could be solid. I think something that's kind of a little bit more than what Will Smith got with the Braves a few years ago. I think that's kind of a good comp on the deal. Maybe one more year on the deal than that. But yeah, I think he's definitely a good reliever, and Royals could use him.
So the couple guys, this is the only reliever we're going to talk about. Spoiler, but we're not going to talk about Jeff Hoffman. We're not going to talk about Carlos Estevez. Both of those guys, free agents from the Phillies, opening up the back end of their bullpen, where they need to sign somebody. I think that with the implosions that we saw in the postseason and late in the season for the Phillies, they opt to make a change and let those guys walk and bring in Tanner Scott. I think the deal might actually be more closely aligned to Damien's deal than my deal. I have them at 4 years, 56. My initial thought, but I think it'll be a little more like Damien's. I think Tanner Scott gets just a smidge more that pushes him out of the range of some of these other teams, like maybe the Royals. Um, the Phillies are going to spend somewhere, right? Because they do every year. Dombrowski just does that, and I think with the loss of their two best relievers, they're going to bring in another good reliever. Makes sense for it to be Tanner Scott. So yeah, Phillies, Tanner Scott. And then I'll be very intrigued to see where Estevez, Hoffman, Clay Holmes is another one who's free agent. Damien mentioned the Yankees need help. There's a lot of good relievers out there, right? So there will be a lot of these holes filled up, right? Even if your team maybe needs relievers and didn't get mentioned here, one of those guys may get to your team. So
yeah, there's a lot of depth guys that we're not talking about here. Of course, this is just the majority of the top free agents there. But let's go ahead and talk about Walker Buehler now, because we do have some differing opinions here of what his contract's going to look like. So I am under the assumption that the World Series, or basically I should say the playoffs, ever since that Padres game showed teams that Walker Buehler is back enough to warrant a long-term deal, rather than a 1 and a 1 with a 1 or an opt-out or something like that. Like, I think he showed enough that teams would be willing to give him money. And I think one interesting factor that happened today is that the Dodgers didn't give him the qualifying offer. And I think that's solely under the assumption that they're going to try and work out an extension with him, and that they didn't want to have to force him into this decision timeline with the qualifying offer decision. The Dodgers have done this with Clayton Kershaw in the past. Walker Buehler idolizes Kershaw and wants to be, he's talked about wanting to be the next, lifelong Dodger. After the World Series, he's talking about how much he loves the city, how much like that. Like, I just have a hard time thinking that Walker Buehler is going to want to leave Los Angeles, especially the way that this team is. And I don't think they play with him on like hey, we'll send you to a 1-year deal with an option and da-da-da-da. I think they end up paying him, because that's usually what they do with their guys. So I have him getting a 5-year, $100 million deal, $20 million a year. I think it's about in line with what he probably should get on the open market in a long-term deal. So, I think it's pretty easy for me, at least, that he goes back on a long-term deal.
Yeah, I have him going back to the Dodgers as well, but I do not think he's getting a long-term deal. He just came off of missing roughly 2 full seasons of baseball, and when he came back, he wasn't very good this year for the entirety of his games in the regular season, and then he had a really good postseason for a couple starts. So, I mean, I don't know. The Dodgers are willing to spend a lot of money, obviously, and I think the Dodgers are pretty aggressive on paying their players. But I don't think that I just don't think the Dodgers are also smart with their money, and I just don't think they're going to give a 5-year deal to a guy who just came off his second Tommy John surgery and is hasn't pitched very well since then, aside from a couple of postseason starts. And I think that he earned himself a really good AAV for this year with his postseason starts. Like $25 million is not anything to scoff at, and the track record being there from the past definitely helps him get that. But I just don't think. I mean, I'll be surprised if he gets a long-term deal. I really will. So
Yeah.
anything like a 20 million, he might get a 3-year deal for less AAV or something. But anything like it's like a $20 million AAV in 5 years, I'll just be shocked if he gets that. But I might be wrong. Damian knows more about the Dodgers than I do, so I might be wrong.
I'll preface by saying I would be shocked if he left,
Yeah,
but the Dodgers aren't going to bid against themselves, right? Like Walker Bueller's, he's got the pedigree, but ask yourself, what would he be getting paid by anybody other than the Dodgers without that run of good postseason starts? Like what, two good starts in a row? What would he be getting paid? I don't think it's very much. It would have been maybe just a 1-year deal. I think that that set of starts has worked him into the Giolito deal, effectively a 1-year team player option with high AV 20 plus million. I'm going to say the Orioles give it to him to try and replace Corbin Burnes. I think the Dodgers probably get him back, but you guys both said the Dodgers have agreed on like 6 people. I don't want to keep agreeing with you guys, so I'm going to say you go somewhere else. I think there's an off chance it happens, but for the most part, it seems pretty clear that he wants to be with the Dodgers. It's just the Dodgers aren't going to bid against themselves, right? So unless he's got to go out there and find something else, and I envision it'll be a whole lot of what you guys have said, right? Where it's like there's going to be like a lot of one to one in player option deal type deals. In that option going from like a team option to a player option over the last 2 starts, I think that's huge for Walker Buehler, but I just don't think that a 4 or 5 year deal is out there for him right now because he just was not good until the very end of the season. How can you bet on that going into next year? You need a year of him at least being closer to what he was at the end of the season. So, yeah, I don't anticipate Walker Buehler gets a long-term deal, but I do anticipate he gets a high AV deal. I'll say the Orioles, but yeah, I ultimately think it's probably the Dodgers. Let's just not always agree.
Right. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Willy Adames now, shortstop from the Brewers. He got the qualifying offer as well. I have him going to the Giants on a massive deal. I think that he is a good defender. He's a power hitting shortstop bat that has shown recently that he can hit for a decent average. I think he will age pretty well. I think at the end of the day, he can end up shifting to a different position if you need to, with it being second or third and still be just fine at it. And I have the San Francisco Giants signing Willy Adames to a 10-year, $220 million deal. I think they tried their big swing in Carlos Correa to get a long-term shortstop option. They missed on it. They tried Aaron Judge to get a long-term option, star player in the outfield, and they missed on it. Now, they have Jung-Hoo Lee, who we don't know what he's going to be. He played a few years, but I think that solved one of their outfield options here. We mentioned Tyler Fitzgerald, who was, he played a good shortstop this year, but can you count on that? I don't know. I think Buster Posey's going to want to make a big offensive upgrade. I think you're going to have to probably overpay somebody to get him there. We've talked how many times they don't have a $30 million or 30 homer season there. But if you put Willy Adames on that left side of the infield with Matt Chapman, first off, that's elite defensively on that side. but I think it gets you another big option offensively there. Gets you a good, very good player that you've been trying to get for a few years there, and I think it locks down your shortstop position. So I have been going to the Giants 2 years, $20 million.
I will say, if the Giants did not get Corbin Burnes, I was going to give him Willy Adames. Think it's a good fit. That said, the other good fit, and Matt will love it, it's the Braves. Braves had Orlando Arcia at shortstop. They just kicked off a bunch of cash off the team with Jorge Soler. They could very easily repurpose that into a Willy Adames, pitch him the Braves way, get him involved. It makes a lot of sense for Willy Adames to go to the Braves. I would be shocked if he isn't at least, if the Braves aren't at least in the mix for this, but I have him like 8 years, 190. It'll be 23, 24 million, somewhere in there to try a year to get Willy Adames, and the Braves can go out and solve that shortstop issue. I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I'd be excited for Willy Adames for sure. I think he'd be a good fit for the Braves. I don't know. My my gut tells me the Braves aren't going to sign one of the top free agents. I don't know what. I feel like they've cleared money to do it, but it just seems like they always balk at it, especially if they feel like there's any chance that they're overpaying. And I think that I've got him going to the Dodgers. I don't know. The Dodgers spend all the money, so might as well give him to the Dodgers. Um, they need a shortstop, I think. I mean, they got Miguel Rojas and Tommy Edman still, but Willy Adames is better than either one of those guys. And the Dodgers are all about upgrading their team without worrying about how much money they're spending. So, um, Tommy Edmonds is versatile, can play center field if they need him to. James Outman was really rough this year. I don't know if he's their future plan there. So Tommy Edman can play there. You've got I know that Damien mentioned before the show that Mookie Betts might want to play the infield. Well, I'd tell Mookie Betts play right field because you're good there and you don't get injured there as easily. So, um, but and I don't know. I don't know. I just picked the Dodgers. I've been thinking he was going to the Dodgers. The Dodgers have coveted him. It sounds like there's been
Yeah.
rumors about that for a long time, and it's
Yeah.
not like they have a surefire shortstop solution. So I'm picking him to go to the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Andrew Friedman drafted him in Tampa Bay, and Robert Murray, friend of the show, has said for a long time they covet him a lot. I just don't know how it fits positionally wise right now. Like I feel like I have a lot of question marks with how they're going to work out a lot of too many players already. So it'll be interesting though. I mean, I wouldn't mind having Willy Adames on the team, but hey. Okay, so let's talk about Anthony Santander now, who got the qualifying offer from the Baltimore Orioles. We were talking a little bit ago. David said that he had the Tigers spending some money to upgrade pitching. I think they do. I just don't think it is top of the market that way. But I think Anthony Santander is a great fit in that Tigers lineup. He could play some corner outfield for him. He can play some DH for him. He's a power hitting bat, which is one thing that they kind of missed was a little bit of slug this year. I think he's just an ultimate pro that kind of fits right into the middle of that. He balances out the lefty righty situation they have very well. You can put him right in the middle of Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter and have him mash lefties from that side, and I don't think you miss one beat there. So I have the Tigers spending some money here, 4 years, $90 million to get a proven home run hitter in Anthony Santander.
Yeah, I've actually got him going to the Giants on a 2-year deal. I don't know that Santander is going to get the same kind of deal that some of these other guys are getting. I do have him getting $20 million per year, but I mean his profile. He hit 44 home runs this year, which is awesome. But there's just something about his profile that just kind of makes me feel like he's going to get overlooked. Being a corner outfielder that's primarily a slug guy. And I think that the Giants are a team that traded Jorge Soler at the deadline. That was kind of their power bat that they had gotten last year. And they also, lost Michael Conforto. He's a free agent. He was their other guy that they were hoping to be a power bat. So they could probably try to replace those guys. And I don't know. I had a hard time placing Soler because he's a pretty good player. but for whatever reason, I just don't know that he's going to get the same kind of free agency that some of these other guys are getting.
I think you're not right about that. I think Santander is about to he's about to wallow in the Pete Alonso sweepstakes is what's going to happen is he's going to present himself as a better or equal opportunity to the teams bidding on Pete Alonso, and capitalize big time on it because there's a bunch of teams that could use a power bat. Santander is very, very reasonably 80th plus percentile on exit velocity, hard hit, barrel per rate, right? He's a very reliable power hitter, to where I don't really care that the average tends to run lower, right? It's similar to a Pete Alonso, a Kyle Schwarber, right? He's that kind of hitter. And this year, the power exploded, got to 44 home runs. I think he parlays that into a big deal. My obvious deal for him is the Royals, right? Keep him in the AL Central like Damian has him with the Tigers. The Royals are the perfect team to splurge and get themselves a guy who can play in the outfield. He is definitely athletic enough to play outfield. Get a guy that can go out there, play left field for the Royals, right? But also spend some time at DH when Salvi is catching and Fermin isn't. It works really nicely as a protection bat, and it's a discount protection bat from them going after Alonso, which also could theoretically be a positional overlap with Pasquantino in Kansas City. So I really like the fit for Santander to the Royals. This is my if I had to pick like a surprise outcome that I like the most, I think this is the one where the Royals and Santander are just a really good fit for each other because Bobby Witt needs some dang help.
Yeah. I would say if I had a dark horse here that I want to mention, I think it's probably the Seattle Mariners. I think he fits that team really, really well too. I was between them and the Tigers. I went with the Tigers at the end, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Mariners. I thought they should at least get mentioned here because I think it fits.
I think the Mariners are going to struggle to sign offense. I think the reputation in Seattle is getting to be like the reputation in Detroit. Just tough to hit.
Yeah,
the one thing is that it's right-handed power really struggles there. The thing with Santander is he is a switch hitter, so that does help him a lot there.
And
so
also with them, I don't know what their money situation is. Last year they were like really tight on money, so I don't know if they're going to spend it at all.
It's interesting. Okay, so let's go talk about Pete Alonso now, who got a qualifying offer from the New York Mets as well. I'll make mine probably short and sweet. I have him going back to the Mets, 5 years, $150 million deal. I think he fits what they want to do. He's a clubhouse guy. He loves New York. And I think that Steve Cohen wants to try and build a top four of Lindor, Vientos, Soto, and Pete Alonso, just to kind of like rival any other offensive top four that they could try. And I think at the end of the day, Pete wants to go back there. There's plenty of other places that have first base options this year. There's plenty of first basemen out there. I just think the Mets at the end of the day just make the most sense to bring back their guy.
Yeah. That would be wild if they signed Soto and Alonso. That would be crazy. That said, I wouldn't be totally surprised, but that would be absurd. I think the Soto and Alonso overlap is a little bit heavy. I'm going to send Alonso to the Padres. We've talked about they need a shortstop, and I think that's true, but I think they've got enough shortstop options on the roster to be able to sponge and maybe get like a defensive first guy and then sign a big slugger. The Padres are also a team that has spent in the past, and they've also dealing with the ownership change. I don't know whether that'll change things or not, but I also think that it's a front office group that really likes to make splashes. And Pete Alonso is the kind of name splash you can make that isn't going to totally break the bank, right? It's not them going out and getting Juan Soto, for example. All right. But
that would be wild.
Yeah. Reunite, right? So I got him for like 6 years, 140, a higher year count, 20-ish million a year. And as their kind of big offensive addition, because it was pretty clear they were missing a bat, right? They had the big group, they were missing a bat, move Bogarts to short, just deal with the bad defense for a year or something like that. I think there's room for it. It's just, there's a lot of fits for Pete Alonso. Matt's going to talk about another one.
Yep. Yeah. I've actually got to go to the Astros. I originally had the Cardinals because they seem to be in this perpetual state of not rebuilding, but I think they finally sound like they're definitely cutting payroll. So I changed my pick here. The Astros are losing Bregman in my theory, and they need to replace that right-handed bat. And I think that bringing in Pete Alonso to fill a massive hole that the Dodgers have, I mean that the Astros have at first base, is going to be a big help for them. And all honestly, I just can't imagine Pete Alonso with the Crawford boxes. So I kind of wanted to see that. But yeah, I got him at 3 years, 60 million with an opt out. I don't think he's going to get a super long term deal. He was pretty bad for a lot of the season this year. He had a fantastic postseason, and he's still streaky and had some good moments this year too. But there's some things that are a little bit of a red flag in his profile. He's also a guy who's likely to eventually be a DH, and that kind of gives me worry about the Astros signing him to a long term deal because I think he could play first base a couple more years, but it's probably not going to be a super long-term solution. And of course, they've got Yordan Alvarez there for a long time. So I think Pete Alonso is going to sign a shorter-term deal, have that opt-out. If he has a big year for the Astros, maybe he moves on and gets that big deal that he wanted.
I did see today MLB put out their kind of predictions. We're obviously putting out our predictions. They put out theirs. 3 of their 4 writers they had predicting all of the names had Pete Alonso going to the Nationals.
Really?
That would be
Yeah, it's
interesting.
super weird.
And I was like, huh, it could work. They do not have a first baseman. They've got a ton of outfielders, and they can shift him to DH as he ages.
Yeah.
It works.
I just
But I don't know if the Nationals are going to go for it yet. Do they hit the green light like that? I don't know.
I think the Nationals. I think the Nationals would be willing to sign somebody like Pete Alonso, but I don't know that Pete Alonso wants to go to a team that's likely not a contender this year.
Yeah.
I mean,
says who? I mean, that's a whole bunch of young kids. I mean, we've seen crazier things happen, like this year's Detroit Tigers.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying, like, I just don't. If you're picking a team and you've got a contract from the Astros and you've got a contract from the Mets have this on the table or something, and you've got like
and the Padres,
the Royals, like if you got these contracts
Royals,
out there, and you're Pete Alonso, why would you pick the Nationals over that? Because I don't think my deal at least is one that if the Nationals give him long term or something, then go for it.
That's what I'm thinking. That's the way you do it. You have to give them the most money. Yeah. And the Nationals have money to spend. They got a bunch of controlled guys on the team.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to go somewhere that's not competing. I don't think the Padres have the money situation to go sign him. I don't think so. And I think there's going to be too many competing teams that have first base openings that would sign Pete Alonso or would be willing to sign Pete Alonso before the Nationals.
Yeah.
Like, there's plenty of teams, I think. Yeah.
And with the Astros also with the Nationals also still kind of being in a rebuild, I don't know if they'll want to give up the draft pick since he got the QO.
Yeah.
Well, the Nationals aren't even close to the luxury tax and stuff. The draft pick is this is the time to sign a qualifying offer free agent. You're not a team that gets hurt by that. So I don't know. I like it, but I see the argument against it, but I like it.
Be something to watch.
I might have made that my prediction if I had seen that a little bit further back.
Let's talk about one of the Padres players now with Seong Kim, elite defensive shortstop. I have him. We were just talking about earlier that you had Willy Adames to the Braves, saying the Braves need a shortstop. I wholeheartedly agree. I think they do need a shortstop. I just think it's Seong Kim. I don't think they pay up enough to go get somebody like Willy Adames, but I think Kim fits them really well. I think it's a very good defensive shortstop, but I think he's a guy who could hit a little bit too. He steals bases. I think he just does everything the right way. He's a perfect guy to fit in the bottom of that lineup for them. I have them going 6 years, 85 million. I think I'm probably overshooting this a little bit, but I think that especially with Kim coming off of he did have to have season-ending surgery. So there's going to be a little bit of question marks around that as well. But I think somebody like his profile, who also has seemed like he was going to get better every single year, like he looked really good to start this year. And then once he got that injury, he kind of played through it a little bit and struggled. and that makes his numbers look worse than what it really does. I think he's settling into MLB, the MLB style of game, so I think that could lead into it a little bit more. So I have him Braves 6 years, 85 million.
Yeah, I actually have him to the Braves as well. I almost picked Adames to the Braves, but my gut just tells me they don't do that big deal, like I said earlier. And I really think that shoulder injury and just his overall profile as kind of a glove first shortstop is going to limit his market some, and the Braves are going to pounce on that. I got him at 3 years, 40, so I don't think he's going to get that much. And honestly, Hassan Kim might prefer that deal because he will still be somewhat young, I believe, at the end of that deal, right?
He is
Um,
29 right now.
yeah, so if he has a couple of really good years, then he could probably get paid again, maybe a little bit more in total than that 680 for 85. And so I could see him, taking that shorter deal, and I don't think he'd prefer it necessarily, but I don't think he'd be super opposed to a shorter deal like that. Still hit free agency again at 32 if he has a couple of really good years with the Braves. But I just don't see many. I don't think his market's going to materialize quite like some of these other guys. So I got him a little bit cheaper, and the Braves Foundation will get a couple $1,000,000 there. So
We've it's one of those things where it feels like the Giants are going to make a splash, right? And the Giants and the Braves both need a shortstop. So the big question is do the Giants splash above Willy Adames, or do they splash on Willy Adames? Because if they splash on Willy Adames, it really just kind of lines up the golden pathway for Ha-Seong Kim to go to the Braves. Now, I said the Braves were getting Willy Adames because the Giants were signing Corbin Burnes, and so this is my Giants shortstop signing where he and Tyler Fitzgerald can play it out in spring training over better, defensively shifts over to second, and they figure it out. I think the fit is good, especially because you've also got Jung-Hoo Lee there, right? A couple of KBO guys. So, I think that can be something that those guys can bond on, and they can help, recruit Ha-Seong Kim over there. And I don't know. That was my entire thought was the Giants are going to get a shortstop. I don't know which one it is, but I didn't put the good shortstop there, so I'm going to put the second best shortstop there, and that's Ha-Seong Kim. So
yeah,
Not a bad way of thinking. Okay, so let's talk about our last free agency prediction here, and that is Christian Walker, who got the qualifying offer from the Diamondbacks as well. If you remember at the beginning of this segment, I talked about the Yankees making the corners better defensively. Christian Walker is an elite defensive first baseman. I think he goes to the Yankees 4 years, $75 million deal. He would also crush in that ballpark. That guy hits homers everywhere. Going to a stadium like that, he would do very, very well as well. Help that infield defense and really just get him out of the NL West and far away from the Dodgers as completely possible.
I would be surprised if he leaves the Diamondbacks. I think Matt's going to have him on the Diamondbacks, but I sent him to the Red Sox. I think he's going to get a good market, a better market than I think we collectively are anticipating. I wouldn't even be shocked if he takes the qualifying offer though. But if you look at the numbers, this is a player that's as good or better than Pete Alonso. He's not going to get that contract, right? He's a little bit older, but he's a better defender at first base. Just won another Gold Glove at first base. So I'm sending him Red Sox, but again, I don't know that he leaves the Diamondbacks. I just someone's gonna go get this guy, and I just think he's kind of a steal type of player. Like I like Santander too. I think I'd rather have Christian Walker for the next 2 or 3 years. Like he's just a little bit better, and he plays good defender, a good defensive first base. He's the equal power hitter that those guys are, but he's got the capability to produce positive defensive value at a position that it's really tough to do that at. I like Christian Walker here, man. I think he's going to get underpaid still.
Yeah. I don't know how the fit with the Red Sox would work with Casas and Yoshida being the DH, but
I mean, trade Casas or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
He's been in and out. It's not
Yeah,
I think they would like to trade
have-
Yoshida.
Yeah, or yeah.
Well,
I think they're gonna have a hard time doing that. But
yeah, he'll be there.
But yeah, I've got the Diamondbacks for Walker. I think he fits really well there. He's been there a long time. They're the team that took a chance on him after he got DFA'd a couple times, and he's been very good for them. I've got him on the same deal as Pete Alonso, but without the opt out. So I've got him 3 years, $60 million. I think it's way more likely. I think Christian Walker is a better player than Pete Alonso. I think he's got maybe doesn't have the same power upside that Pete Alonso has. I mean, Pete Alonso has had a 50 home run season in his career, but although it was 2019 when everyone had a 50 home run season. But I think the Christian Walker the Diamondbacks really need to keep him there. They need to keep that core intact. I mean, and it seems like their payroll situation is pretty good because, I mean, they just brought back Eugenio Suarez, who, if their payroll situation wasn't good, then they might have let him go with that option, given that it was like $16 million or something. So um, I think that they probably are willing to spend a little bit, and bringing back Christian Walker is a pretty perfect way to spend because they don't really have another option there anyway. So you're gonna have to sign somebody. You might as well sign the guy you got, and he's not gonna be too expensive. So I definitely think that's a good spot for him to stay.
Or you sign the guy you had before Christian Walker.
You could,
That's my theory.
We didn't put him on there.
but he's also.
No,
I think he
back
goes
now,
to the
so.
Astros.
That's a good one too. I mean,
I don't know
they love doing
yeah,
that.
the Astros. I don't know. They're probably terrified of signing veteran first baseman on the decline after the last one they did. So
This one can just be a 1-year deal, not the 3-year deal
Maybe.
that Abreu was. But I think Goldschmidt's still got a little gas in the tank.
Probably.
he's
Just a
pretty
little bit.
bad this year.
All right, so let's real quick talk about some of the other qualifying offer decisions that we had. So just a handful of them. Nick Martinez from Cincinnati Red got the qualifying offer. Sean Manaea got the qualifying offer from the Mets, as did Luis Severino. He got the qualifying offer. Who's the other one I'm missing? I'm missing another.
Did you get
The
Nick
questionable one.
Martinez?
Yes.
He did. That was the first one.
Who was the other one? There was another questionable pitching one we thought about.
Severino,
Manaea,
Manaea,
Severino,
Martinez, and
Pavetta. Nick
Pivetta. There
Yeah,
it is. Nick Pivetta got the qualifying offer from the Red
Yeah.
Sox. These are interesting scenarios because I think you can make arguments almost for any of them to pick it up or not. I mean, Nick Martinez probably should just pick it up. Like
Yeah.
as soon as it was submitted, he probably should have just picked it up. But I think you can make an argument that Pivetta, Manaea, or Severino should either pick it up or turn it down. It's an interesting case with those guys.
Yeah, I'll be kind of surprised if Manaea and Severino. I don't know. I'd be a little bit surprised if Manaea or Severino turn it down, or if they take it. I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them get re-signed by the Mets, though. Which would kind of void the fact that they took, have that qualifying offer. It might be kind of protection for the Mets to try to get them back.
Yeah, I think Manaea does.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and then with Pivetta, I'm split on him because some of the metrics think his stuff is better than his record is and his track record is, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know. This is why you don't sign GMs that don't have front office experience, because they do stuff like this. So
Breslow was in the Cubs front office. What?
for a little while, but he's more of a ex-player that was a long-time player, hadn't had a ton of front office type stuff. But anyways, either way, that's a story for another day.
I've got all 4 of these guys accepting the qualifying offer, but the one guy I think that could reject it and not see his market crater is Manaea.
Yeah.
Is where I'm
definitely
at.
the one that I feel like probably will.
Yeah.
And that's where I think what you said, where the Mets just offered it as a, hey, we want you back. So you can either just come back on the 1 year on that salary, or we'll work out a deal of like 3 years, 60 some odd million.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense because he was their rock this year. And I mean, I don't see a reason for him to go off that. And now the Mets have kind of hamstrung his free agent case, which was always going to be the mid-tier starter, not encumbered by the qualifying offer. And now he's encumbered by it. Either take it or work out a deal with the team that gave you the qualifying offer and stick around.
The only reason that I could see him potentially taking it is because of his delivery change in the middle of the year. That if he took a 1-year deal, he definitely, and he could prove that in a full year, how good that is. And then he wouldn't have the qualifying offer attached to him next year. And you could say, look, 1.5 years of this change. But I think it makes the most sense to just stay with the Mets there. I wouldn't be surprised if Severino picked it up. and Pivetta
should.
and Martinez probably should. Severino, I mean, maybe you can make the argument like, hey, would you rather like a long, a 3-year deal rather than the 1 guaranteed year? There's the argument for that, but I don't know. It's something we'll have to definitely watch for when these deadlines happen, whatever. But also, one note: the Oakland Athletics are no more officially today. It is now just to be called the Athletics. They aren't even being called Sacramento Athletics. They're just going by Athletics. So there's that. Yeah, it's really weird, but hey, who knows? Alrighty, so that basically is going to wrap up this episode. We are an hour and 45 minutes in. This is always a longer one usually anyways. But free agency is officially opened as of 5 p.m. Eastern time today, Monday, November 4th, as recording this. Editorial note, just remember that in the off season, starting this time, we will be taking a week off in between episodes, so it'll be every other week. So the next time that we will be back with an episode will be November 18th. And then every other week from there, and we will hopefully have some moves by that point that we can talk about. GM meetings are underway here, usually lay some groundwork, so will be interesting. But before we head out, anything else you guys wanna wrap up on?
I don't think so. It's been a long episode, so not too much. I guess we might break in with if there is an early signing or something, we might have a surprise podcast, but we'll see what happens there.
Yep, leave that one on the table. This one's enough for 2 episodes. You guys should have plenty of content.
Yeah, plenty. All right, so thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the Batflip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys back here in a couple weeks. Make sure it stopped again.
Ooh, buddy.
Is my stuff up? Yep. All right, I gotta go.
It was a long one.
Your boys is about to starve, so I'll talk to y'all.
See you, Matt.
See you guys.